Cliff, Spencer,
Yes.
Latanya, Aaron, Shaviva, Rhonda,
Yep.
Joe, Teresa, and Marcus. Am I missing any other voting members? Oh, and myself. All right. Let's go ahead and try to get this thing started. We've got a little bit of a longer meeting, obviously, today. Welcome. Today we'll sort of go through. Thanks everybody for getting those, taking time over break to get your votes in. It wasn't without any wrinkles, but it all in all, I think was relatively smooth. A couple of folks had some issues on that Google file uploading. I think it might have just been an issue of, I don't know if it was firewall issues or what, but thanks for getting those turned in. We did get everybody's votes on each of the submissions, or most of the submissions, and so I can sort of go through some of that. I did send over what we've compiled over to Joe, I believe to Kendra as well. So our first order today is to discuss, what the phase one evaluations. I can, give me 1 second. I will just email everybody. That's probably the easiest. I'll just reply all.
Doug Laird, Ann Meyer.
Oops. I'm going to email everybody right now. Or actually, Kendra, if I send it to you, can you put it up on the screen? Open it, yes.
She's there.
Give me 1 second, guys. I'll get this figured out soon.
Cliff. We're in
Kendra, can you?
Yeah.
Well, while we're waiting for Kendra to hopefully be able to pull this up, we had sorry, guys. So we did have from what I could tell, there was a pretty good spread of scores, which helped sort of narrow that list. So we just need to set sort of the benchmark, I guess, for what we're going to move to round two. We didn't have that discussion. I think at the last meeting we had talked about reserving that discussion for today. So how is it that we can sort of put a mark and say, all right, we're gonna ask those 8 questions of designs A, B, C, D, and so forth. And so I sent Kendra, I sent you actually 2 different documents. One is ends with the same file name but ends with B. It's got the entire listing, and then there's another that has just those scores that average that came out to over 50% yes votes to move on to the next round. To me, that seemed like a natural place to say, yeah, we'll consider these, or no, we won't. If we couldn't, because we didn't have the highest threshold to say that something should move to round 2, and so to me, it would make sense, but obviously that's open to discussion, and would love to hear other folks' thoughts as to what should be our threshold really for moving on to round 2. There were 32 or 33 designs submitted that were above 50%. There were a lot that were right at 50%. There were a number that were right at 50%, and I can play with. I can go back into the sheet and see which ones were which. Shout out to Erin Page for putting a ton of work in. She went through there might be, and actually, Erin, if you can sort of speak to the notes that you had provided that folks will see on their screens right now.
Sure, thanks. I just kind of did some image searches because as it turned out, a lot of the images that were submitted are either stock art, clip art, or actually copyrighted images. And so based on which of the ones that had 50% yes or and above, we then started looking into what are the ones that are copyrighted images that we're just not going to be able to use. The police require a commercial license, and they require ownership of the design because it's a trademark, because it's a logo, because they don't want caps on merchandise, and because we don't want another group to be able to own it at the same time that the police do. Unfortunately, using stock art images is just not an option for us. So for the people who went to Google search and found an image and then designed a badge around it, you know, there was nothing wrong with doing that. Unfortunately, we just can't use those designs for the logo. But then there were several, as in 11, copyrighted images that were full out plagiarism. And unfortunately, I don't think we should consider any of those designs because they didn't have a right to be submitted in the first place. And then we need to decide if we want to go with the Waterloo logo or not, if we think that's a logo to keep in the consideration, or if because it's already used for other offices, step that one aside. But that's basically it. And if anybody wants details on a specific image, I have them.
So let's take, I've got an assumption, but don't want to assume. Is there consensus? And some of it's sort of a moot point anyways, as we're looking through what gained over 50%. I guess we'll start there. What are what are committee members' thoughts on sort of what that threshold should be? Like I said, 30 some designs were submitted on time and through the correct channels that received votes, over 50% votes. Any thoughts there?
Mr. Hall, Spencer.
Yeah, you got it, man.
How many of these submissions that netted over 50% votes are able to be used, a reference of what Aaron is telling us about.
Yeah, so there's only one design that uses there's only one design that uses an image from, let's see, from Switzerland. So it used an existing image, with the exception of there were some logos or some designs that use the city logo, but I think that's another discussion on how distinctive, for safety and standout purposes that needs to be. But in terms of copyrighted designs or elements that we wouldn't, that would pose a problem, there was only one design of those designs over 50%.
Okay, and if that's the case, based on what I voted for, yes and no, I'm okay with going, if it over 50% to move it on, and then just try and reduce this down as much as we can, so we can start to, go through the details on each one. I didn't, I voted for several of them that I didn't necessarily like, but it fit the criteria. So I'm all for, let's try and boil this down as much as we can.
Yep, for sure.
Tavis, which one had the royalty issue that we should eliminate?
I'm sorry, what was it?
Which one had the trademark / royalty issue of those top ones that we should remove?
The only one that was there was WPD 112.
Okay.
So
Davis, is that the one that looks like a shield?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Not the one that looks like a shield with justice scales? Yeah, it doesn't conform to the shape anyway.
Yeah.
The thing you posted on Google's 58%. Did you do 50 or 58?
So anything over 50%. So there were plenty that just hit at 50%. So since we got an even number of respondents here, I figured any design that got a simple majority would move on, and that would be the 32, 33 number. If we were, let me play with the, let me pull this number here. If we were to add in the ones that were at 50, we would add on another 17 designs.
I just like choices and variety. Speaking from my personal, there's just a lot of issues here. It'd just be easier to have more choices for the next scoring, in my personal opinion. I don't want to whittle it too fast and leave something behind that we work with, especially with what Aaron did. Some of that stuff we're going to have to eliminate. The City of Waterloo's logo, although nice, has a lot more colors in it than our current design, which could be more costly.
Yeah, like I said, Joe, my thought was that if we couldn't get sort of we couldn't get a simple majority just to pass that minimal threshold, that I just didn't, we can include them if we want to include the additional 17. And I understand the desire to have more options. We don't have to have a decision next month either. While that would be great and preferred, not that everybody's not having a heck of a time on this on these Zoom calls every month. But we've got some time if we need to come back to other designs. But my gut tells me if we can't get if we can't get over 50% to agree that something, if we can't get a simple majority to agree that something should move on to the next round, then I don't know how that design would, I can't envision a scenario where that design would rise to the top, but it's up for chat.
So do we have agreement to include all the designs that scored 50% and up?
Are we, so yeah, so we're sort of talking about whether it's 50% and up, or if it's over 50, or if it's like 51% and up, or is it 50% and up? Because there were a number that got out of the 12 of us got 6 votes. But does that, you know,
That seems like a fair place to start. 50%, you know, just cut it in half, and if it got half, then it moves on.
okay?
It's Dave Boson.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't know if any of these logos that have the City of Waterloo logo on them. I do know that the mayor's goal is to rebrand the city in the next couple of years, and I would hate to, if any of these are in the works, I would hate to have these on a police department patch and then have us rebrand the city with a different logo.
Yeah.
That's just my thoughts. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Hey, Tavis.
Yep.
It's Rhonda. I thought originally we were going to try and keep it as close to the Griffin as possible. But a lot of these are pretty much everything.
Yeah. So the first consideration, you know, what we've talked about is that we would score all of these. The first ones that we'll vote on are include elements of a Griffin, but I don't think, and that's up for discussion. I'd love to hear the 2 members of council speak to this issue. But it was my understanding that it wasn't to get as close to the existing Griffin as possible. It was to do a redesign of the insignia and giving first consideration to a Griffin. But I don't know that language was aimed at being as close as possible to the existing Griffin design. Maybe Sharon or Dave, if you could speak to that.
Yeah, Teos, if I can address that. In fact, we didn't want the existing Griffin. The existing Griffin was what was voted out. What our resolution said, first consideration to restylized Griffin. So yes, a Griffin, but not the existing Griffin. So
There's a lot of background noise. I can't.
Yeah, Sharon, if you could hold on 1 second. If everybody who is certainly not speaking, but definitely non-voting members, if you can mute your phones, appreciate it. Thank you. Go ahead, Sharon.
Yeah, again, and I can pull out the resolution if you'd like, but it is, hold on, I got it. Part of the resolution says that a revision of the current Griffin logo will be initially considered by the committee. So of the ones that you voted on, those that incorporate revision of a Griffin should be given initial consideration. Does that answer your question, Rhonda?
Yeah. Originally I thought that's kind of where we were leading to, is something to soften the Griffin, is what everybody was upset about at the meeting, the original meeting, when we all spoke, people spoke public and you listened to them. So I thought that's what initially, so that's kind of what I was trying to vote on. And then second was the color, to keep, like I said, when officers are working at a public event, when there's a large crowd, it's important for us to be able to find the other officer from a distance.
Sure. But as far as the resolution goes, anything that incorporates a Griffin, a restylized Griffin, should be given the initial consideration. So Davis, I don't know how that factors into your voting, but that is part of the resolution.
Okay.
Sharon,
Yeah, I
thought
think-
it was preference. Did it just say consideration?
It says that a revision of the current Griffin logo will be initially considered by the committee. So
Okay.
any of these that were voted on that, you know, scored over 50%, that incorporate a restylized Griffin should be given initial consideration.
This is Cliff Coffrin. May I speak?
Absolutely.
Good afternoon. Yeah, there's still some things that I'm kind of confused with because, and I understand that meeting that night was unfortunately very heated. I know that once people started to settle down, it got to the point where it really wasn't the Griffin, the patch, so to speak, on the officers' uniforms. It was the squad car coming up to the residents that were intimidating so many of our citizens. Well, that being said, I mean, yeah, if you look at the Griffin now, it's not enclosed in the patch per se. And my thinking was they would try to tame that, if you will, to not make that so intimidating, but yet the patch on the officers' uniforms weren't anything that anyone had really complained about at that meeting. That was my understanding of what was all going on. And I guess I could understand that. And it could, you know, obviously cut down on a lot of the cost if we were to just focus on the vehicles themselves. Because as you can see, most of the people who are voting on the patches or the new design, the Griffin is still incorporated. My 2 cents.
Can I address that, Davis?
Yeah, how about?
It was the entire logo, whether it be on the patch, the uniform, the car, the guns, the letterhead. It is the logo, period, wherever it applies.
That was what they came up with, right, Sharon?
That was the motion of the council, yes,
The council, okay.
Yeah.
Not the citizen, the council.
the council.
Okay.
Mr. Hall?
Yeah.
Are we to make motions within this meeting, or is that not this formal?
Yeah, I think we probably should.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to move everything forward that scores 50% or above, so we can move on.
I'll second that.
All right. So we've got a motion and a second for everything that's at 50% and above. All in favor, say aye, or wave your hands, or
Aye.
thumbs up.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So I'm gonna ask that again because I'm not sure if I caught that quite right. Are there any opposed? All right. So that motion carries. There are. I just want to make sure I've got some clarification here. We've got some that scored at 50%. So that 50, those scores that were over 50%, there weren't really any issues except for the one design with the copyright issue, with the potential copyright issue. There are a handful of others and I just sent around the sheet to everybody so you can scroll through yourselves versus trying to follow it on the screen. It's a pretty big document, so it's a little difficult. So the same email that Kendra sent the agenda and the Zoom link to, I just replied all to that message. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like there's 5 that have some ties back to a vectorstock.com design element.
So can somebody maybe a little more knowledgeable on what that means, maybe explain? Yeah, I'm scrolling through it, and yeah, can be purchased outright, license details at vector stock. So that means we could buy the license to that particular image. Is that what that means?
It is possible to buy the licenses, but here's the problem with that. It was not my understanding that we were able to pay for these designs. So firstly, if we are going to spend money on a design, I would love it for it to be a local artist. But the problem with these royalty-free vector stock, iStock type of designs is that anybody can own them. You know, you can try to get a commercial license for it, but so can any other organization that would like to use that image. And in my mind, that is a safety issue. It's not exclusive. So not only could it be somewhat easier to impersonate an officer if anybody could just download the image and make a badge or make a letterhead or make a business card, but you know, one of the questions that I saw on the change.org petition was, you know, how do we make sure that the new image that we pick doesn't then become a problem a year from now or 5 years from now? And that's a really valid question. And one of the ways that we guarantee against that or work towards that is to make sure that you guys own the image outright, so that there's no other group who can go do something nefarious. All of a sudden this image blows up and now it's associated with the police department, right? So we need something that's for commercial use. And most of the time, these royalty-free images are not available for commercial use. They're available for your personal download. They're available if you want it as a tattoo, but they're not available as like trademark logos that you could then print on a t-shirt and sell or use as a logo for the department. And so we just want to protect you in every possible way. And part of that is having an image that you own. So although there are some that, yes, we could purchase if that's the route you guys would like to go to, we'd still have to share it with any other group that wants to purchase it. There were a few, I don't know, I'm not sure based on my notes yet and not having had a chance to look over the scoring. There were some that were available for purchase that were not royalty free, like where there would be an exclusive right to it. But the problem is the person who submitted that patch design plagiarized that image to even submit the patch design in the first place, because those are copyrighted images for sale. Right. So we run into all kinds of issues with all of those that are just not really appropriate for your licensing needs and for the safety of the department. But if you guys really, really love one and want to purchase it outright, there are some where that's a possibility. But it has to be an exclusive license that's for commercial use. And most of them, if it says iStock or vector stock, that's what NA for C means, not available for commercial use. Does that answer the question at all?
Yes, actually, thank you for sharing that. I would point out that our current patch was never trademarked. Anybody could have used it. And yeah, that was probably a mistake on our part at some point.
But it was designed for you, right? Like you didn't just pull it off some, yeah.
It was designed for us, but we never locked it up, and we probably should have. Okay. So the new one, we should do that.
Tavis, can I go back to what Rhonda said earlier as far as scoring? Not knowing how many we have at 50 and above, does the language then indicate that of those 50 that have stylized or a new griffin on them, should be the first round that we vote on. That's my understanding, and I would want to make sure that Tavis and Joe and the rest of the members agree with that.
So I think that we could score them all, as opposed to drawing this out further than it necessarily needs to. So we could score the Griffin designs and non-Griffin designs at the same time. Compile all those scores, find the averages of those scores, but then we just set a threshold, for how many of the designs that incorporated Griffin do we want to vote on first? Do we want to vote on first? Do we want to exhaust the entire? At the next meeting, do we want to exhaust the entire list of Griffins? So let's say for the sake of conversation, that there are Griffin designs, that there are averages in the 90s, 80s, 70s, even 60s, right? Do we want to go all the way down to scores that are averaging in the 60s with Griffin designs when there are potentially higher consensus designs if we've already exhausted a number, right? So, do we say of the 50-ish, 40-ish designs that we'll consider here in the next month with our scoring? Do we want to say we'll consider the top 5 Griffin designs initially, or do we want to exhaust all of them? I think that is certainly a point of conversation for this group.
Dave.
Yeah.
If you follow the resolution, that we need to consider a variation of that Griffin first, if we're going to go by the letter of the resolution. So comparing 5 Griffins to five other ones that score high, my interpretation of it is that you take your highest Griffin ones and you score them and see if you can come to a consensus with this group. And if not, then we move on to non-Griffin related patches. But that's just my interpretation of it.
So I guess my thought would be that if we're scoring all of them individually and we come to the meeting and we discuss those Griffin designs, whether it's a preset number or all Griffins first, and if we can't come to a consensus at that point, then move to those other scored, they would have already been scored, but not necessarily wouldn't be voted prior to any Griffin design. But again, if I'm just the guy that somehow got stuck running the meeting.
But it's water. I'm just pointing out how the interpretation of that resolution was to consider a variation of the Griffin first.
Exactly.
So however that make
Which I think is sorry, go ahead, Latanya.
No, that was me.
Okay, go ahead, Shabiba.
No, I was gonna say, I understand that we are supposed to be given first consideration to a design with a reworked Griffin first, but if the other non-Griffin designs are sort of excluded, it's almost like you're forced in a situation of choosing a Griffin design, and I didn't know that's what we were doing.
Okay, that's it. That's exactly what I was going to say, because I thought it said redesign. So again, if it's a redesign, I'm confused as to what is so hard to understand about that.
Well, I thought that's what it said, was redesign the Griffin is what was said in the resolution at the city council. That was decided by them.
Right, and if we do not agree on the redesign, then we move forward with a non-Griffin.
That's exactly right, Latanya. The first thing we vote on is anything that's got a revision of the current Griffin, a revision. If that, any revision doesn't get more than 50%, is not something that 7 or more of you can agree on, then you go to the non-Griffin designs. But you need to give consideration first to a revision of the Griffin. And if you agree on that,
so let me
go to the next one.
So let me ask this: if we give the first 5 votes to designs that include a Griffin, are we not honoring the resolution by first considering the Griffin?
Yeah, no, if your first
That
vote,
doesn't mean that.
if your first vote is on a revision of the Griffin and you can't reach consensus, but if you can, then that's your design. If you can't, then you go to the non-Griffin designs.
But so I just want to, because this is an important piece for our phase 2 process. If we have to exhaust every design that's over 50, that's 50% and above through round 1, do we have to vote on every single design, regardless of its score, that has a Griffin, or can we set a number,
Sure.
to first consider the first 5 Griffins, for instance?
And Dave,
And if we can't come to consensus on one of those 5 Griffins, then we move to the most popular, the 5 most popular non-Griffins. If
Yeah.
we can't come to consensus there, then we go back to Griffins, back to non-Griffins. To me, that makes sense, and it provides some balance in this process while still giving preference. It still gives initial preference to the Griffin, gives initial consideration to that Griffin. But that's where I come down on this. But we're always open. It's an open discussion.
well, and I'd want Dave to chime in on this. My belief is the first consideration after we've gotten over the 50% is to the Griffin. You as a committee can decide if we're going to give consideration to the top 10 or the top 15 or the top 20. That's not spelled out. The only thing that's spelled out is your initial consideration is to a redesign of the Griffin. Dave, would you agree with that?
Yes, ma'am. My thought process is if you want to take the top 5 of the Griffin, the top 10 of the Griffin redesigns, and vote on it. And if you don't get, like Sharon said, 7 votes, then we move on to non-Griffin designed patches. And then if you don't get 7 votes, you're just going to have to keep going back and forth. But the resolution clearly states that we have to consider a redesign of the Griffin first.
Right.
So I don't, Davis, I don't care if you want to go 5 or 10 of the top Griffins, but I think they need to be voted on. And as a group, you got 6 and 6. So you're either going to have someone come to another side and agree with it, or we move on to the next phase.
I want to know if consideration and preference are equivalent terms with us talking about this Griffin.
I'm not following what you want, what variation you want, because basically the resolution says we have to consider Griffin first. Variation.
But if does consideration equal first preference?
I would believe if it says we have to consider the Griffin first, it's first preference. But you also have to come to a majority vote on that, whichever ones you're looking at. And if you can't come with a majority vote, if it's 6 to 6, it fails, and you move on to Plan B. Sharon, is that how you see it?
Absolutely. And
okay,
you might have, we seem to be divided, obviously, as a committee into Griffin and non-Griffin. The people that favor the Griffin initially in concept might, in voting, when they're actually looking at the logos, have one that's not a Griffin that they prefer. So preference and consideration are 2 totally different things. We're just asking, the council said you just have to give consideration first to the Griffin, the redesigned Griffin. Whether you
and it is
might not like it.
it is my sincere request and hope that we'll take each of these designs. We've got an 8-question process for each design. I hope that we have, whether you are pro existing insignia, for those non-Griffin designs, I hope you'll give us an honest look. If you are 100% against any Griffin, I hope you give Griffin designs an honest look. This process to create those, the reason we're creating those 8 questions is to break through folks' sort of predetermined mindsets, and I get it. I mean, I'm passionate about this issue just as everybody else is. But to break through and really dissect each of these designs on their own merits and not based off of all the other politics of this issue, because Lord knows it's a political issue, and I get it.
Yep.
I just wanted to point out that I did send over, just for everybody's review, the list of over 50. We're total at, actually it's 59. There were more 50% than I originally thought, but we're at 59 designs. So obviously that'll take some work, but we did cut the list in half to start.
Well, to be honest, I think that probably should be our goal. I mean, in the next round, we'll probably cut it in half again, and then we can sort. And we're having a lot of talk about Griffin or no Griffin, but we don't know what the final, for example, 10 is going to be. I mean, nobody knows what that's going to look like until we all vote. And like Tavis said, everybody kind of votes their heart, and we all put it in there and see what comes out. I don't think we're all going to agree on one design. Honestly, I can walk around this building and show somebody what I like, and they hate it. So I think we're going to have the same issue with us. Fortunately, I think we need, it just needs to be one. I don't think you're going to have a 12-0 vote. I think we all got to accept the fact that if it's 8-4 or 7-5, that's what it is. But I think we just need to move forward, and we've narrowed it down, and we use the criteria and narrow it down further and just keep whittling away at this thing until we get to where we're down to a manageable number.
And what I'll probably do, because that number is a little higher, is we'll probably make a few different forms. So there'll be we'll group them or and not necessarily based off of design elements, but we'll group them so that you can submit 10 designs at a time. The unfortunate part about using Google Docs is you can't save as you go. So you have to sit down and do a batch, but if we break them down into 5 or 10 designs at once, hopefully folks, if folks want to get through all 57 designs, then I think, more power to you. But if you don't have a couple hours to block off, then hopefully you can get to it in your leisure. But we will take all of those. We'll need all of those designs. We'll need to set a deadline as a group to get those back. But to me, that makes sense if everybody else is open to it, to sort of splice this group up a little bit, these groupings up, so that we don't have to, if we keep it one form, we have to grade 57 designs with 8 questions. We'll be answering 456 questions. I'm not that good at tests.
Don't get overwhelmed.
That's what you
Yeah.
got to do, Tavis, is take all 59 of them and score them by that criteria. We're going to have to do that regardless of how you group them, right?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I just wanted to make sure that folks knew that you'd probably get 3 or 4 links so that you could submit 10 or 12 or 15 at a time versus having to submit all 57 at once.
Okay.
Yeah.
What if
We
we,
still have a deadline. We would have a deadline for all of them would be the same time. But just in ease of submitting your scores, it's going to be a lot more manageable.
what if we went away from Google and used Excel and just created a tab with the 58 patches on it? You send it to everybody, the scores on the left, the patches on the right. They score them, it totals, and then we just calculate them all when they come in. Yeah, it would take a little bit of time, but I find myself wanting to look at the patch as I score it. I don't like trying to bounce back and forth.
Well, so the Google form that I sent you, Joe, and Kendra, I'll send it to you as well. So that one does have, it incorporates, we drag over the image so that you're grading based off of.
Yeah, I just wanted to see the images I was scoring, like a big thumbnail.
Yeah, which you would. Kendra, I'm going to send this over to you right now.
And Tavis, the new scoring sheet will just have the images on it that are 50 and above, correct? You'll weed out all the rest of them and weed out the ones that we can't use that have trademark limitations and so forth. You'll weed all that out before we get it.
Well, we need
to remove the Waterloo logo or not.
That's what I was raising my hand for, is are we taking those out?
Okay, so I make a motion that we remove any of the ones above 50% that include the City of Waterloo logo.
I'll second that.
Okay. So we've got a motion and a second to remove all designs incorporating the Waterloo logo. Do we have any discussion on that?
Tavis, I brought that up just because, like I said earlier, the mayor wants to rebrand the city. He's looking for funding to do it. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And I would hate to see that patch on our police officers' shoulders, and then we go to the entire city rebrands, and then we're back buying new patches again. You know what I mean?
I agree. I agree.
I didn't mean to interrupt. Thank you.
Well, my only comment to that is the logo on the police vehicles and the patches is different from the logo for the city. So, in my opinion, if the city changes their logo, it shouldn't matter what the new logo is, because it hasn't matched anyway. That's just my thoughts.
Do we have any more discussion on the motion on the floor is to, go ahead. Go ahead, Teresa.
The reason I wanted it is somebody said something about safety and not being a police officer and not knowing, like, if it's rebranded to something that other offices have, is that a safety thing for officers?
I would agree with her that, yeah, it probably is. Not so much for the officer, but for the other city departments. Yes, if we're all labeled the same and a building inspector pulls up with the same logo on his car as a squad car, that might create an issue for that side of it. My bigger concern with the city logo is the number of colors. It's got a lot more colors than what we currently have. And not being a patch designer, I don't know what that does for cost, but it's something we certainly, I remember we talked about, limiting it to 4 colors. Well, that's well over 4 colors.
Yeah. All right. Do we have any further discussion? I want to cut debate on this one. All right. So we've got a motion and a second to remove all designs that are 50% and above that use the city logo. All in favor, say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed, please, same sign.
Opposed.
All right. All right. The motion does carry. The other piece, I think, to talk through is we haven't, I don't know that I heard a resolution or resolving the issue of certain designs having vectorstock.com, some licensed and trademarked licensed sheets. Aaron, do we need to discuss that more, or are we just going to let that one pass? And
I will also make a motion to throw out any royal stock, clip art, pre-used, unexclusive image that's above that 50% threshold. Just so there's no safety issues, there's no copyright infringement, and just so we're not using some royalty image that anybody else could use too.
I can leave us
All right, do we have-
two. Just kidding.
Oh, sorry, what was that?
That's going to leave us with about two. I'm just kidding.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Actually, I was just looking at that. That leaves us with 43.
It's a good place to start.
Yeah. So do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second her motion.
All right. Do we have any further discussion on removing any of the designs from further consideration that use licensed or copyrighted or clip-arted elements within their design?
Yeah, I would just say that, this is Spencer. I do like some of those designs. I mean, if it's an absolute that we cannot use those no matter what, I understand, maybe from a legal standpoint, but if this is just something we're exploring, I mean, I just hate to cut it out unless we know for sure we can't use it. There may be some issues we could pay for it, but yeah, I don't know. I'm a little apprehensive about cutting all those.
Any other discussion?
You guys hear me, Tavis?
Yep, go ahead.
If there is any way that we can investigate a little more to see what those costs would be, if they have a 50% rating or above, and that means quite a few of us were interested in those logo designs. So I do think it is worth the looking into to see what that cost would be, if any at all. We may find that there's no copyright infringements that would be involved, so therefore it wouldn't be a cost to the city at all.
The ones that are available for sale, I have the names of the designers, the cost that they're asking for, and the websites that they're posting on. So I do have that information. But again, I'm going to just state that my concern is that it was absolute plagiarism to submit that as a design in the first place. That is a problem. Like, it's illegal to have done what they did. I mean, unless this designer in Ukraine is the one submitting it for the patch, they just never had the right to submit it in the first place. Now, those are for the copyrighted images. The royalty stock images are different. They did have the right to submit them, but unfortunately, there are only two that would be available for commercial use. And let me tell you which two those are. Hold on. Let's see. 60 and 90. WPD 60 and 90. So let's look at those. 60 scored the 50% threshold and 90 did not. So the only one that's available for purchase that was a royalty-free image where they had the right to submit it in the first place is entry 60.
And then Aaron, could the city of Waterloo or the police department own that logo then outright so no one else could use it?
It seems so. It seems that they are available for commercial use, but it's like up to the designer. We'd have to get on the website and contact the designer and see if they want to sell us the image. The prices are not listed. You know, they could charge us anything, and they could just turn us down anyway. So again, like the exclusive rights for commercial use was very few of those royalty images. So thankfully only the one passed the 50% threshold, number 60. And let me take a look at my notes on 60.
And let me ask Joe, I'm assuming, Joe, that the police department would want to own outright their logo.
Yes, I think ideally, although we don't now, and
But
I'm not understanding near half of what Aaron understands when it comes to copyrights. We've never owned our logo now. We've never done anything with it. I got a call the other day, somebody was making t-shirts with it, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know how to help you with that. It's a public domain image as far as I know, but again, I know very little about it. I know there's several of them that she has listed that the officers do like, that I like, and I think we'd be willing to find a way to pay for them. But if we can't, that's a question for someone far wiser than me.
Well, you know what? If you can give me a list of the ones that the officers like, I can make sure to cross-reference the data and get you, so it's like we can see what things are costing,
So looking at the designs, Aaron, 38, 45, 46, and 80 look like those are the ones that are vectorstock.com, not available for commercial use.
38 is not available for commercial use, no matter how much we might like it, unfortunately. What was the next one?
45.
45 is the same as 38.
Then 46.
Nope, it is not. 45 is not available for commercial use, no matter how much we might like it. Next.
Yeah.
What was the next one?
46.
46 is the same image.
And then 80.
And then 80. Let's look at 80.
It's the same one.
It's the same image over and over. Yeah. So unfortunately, no matter how much we like it, it's just not available for commercial use as a trademark or logo.
No.
Not legally.
So we've I should have jotted my notes down. I know we had a motion by Aaron. I forget who had the second to remove those images that
maybe with the exception of number 60,
you
because
wanna make
that
an
one we
amendment to that
could get
motion?
available for commercial use if people like
Okay.
it.
Is that who made the second on that motion? I can't remember.
I think it was
Sorry.
made for Joe.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I think it was Joe.
Joe, does that works for you for that amendment to include the just to exclude those designs that have an image that's not available for commercial use?
It hurts me, but I understand legally we don't have a lot of choice. So
No. All right. So we've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye, or show your hands.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. All right, that motion carries as well. So we'll remove that. That gets us to 48 designs that we will consider over the next month or so. At this point, Kendra, if you're able to pull up that the scorecard. If you had it on screen share at one point, there we go. So here's the sort of quick version here, or draft version. Obviously, we don't have any other designs input, but where it currently says WPD rebrand submissions, that image would be replaced with, whatever that particular design for consideration, and then you just be able to scroll down and vote based off of that. It is theoretically possible. It is theoretically possible to put all of those into an Excel file. That Excel file would have 48 tabs.
No, I'll tell you, this doesn't work. You can see the image. This is perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Whew.
I just didn't like the little images. It was kind of hard to do. So I like.
Yeah. I agree. That first round was a little difficult. There was just so many that to put all of those into this type of format, I would have had my hairline would be further back than it already is, trying to get all those in there. So, all right. So let's go through. Just want to make sure that we've got all the grading criteria agreed on. And we talked about this at the last meeting, but by the time we talk next, we will have considered all 58 of these images with the criteria that we agreed to today. So I just want to make sure that we are all in agreement or in enough of agreement here. So if you look at your agenda, the proposed criteria are color contrast, size and scalability, visibility, legibility, professionalism, uniqueness, conformity to shape. That's particularly with the in keeping the patch in mind, and then personal preference, just which ones you like and which ones you don't. Like I said, that was what I had from my notes from last month's meeting. And I'm pretty sure those are all squared up from our discussion last month, but like I said, I wanted to make sure before we all go through a grading process and then there's an issue. So open that up for discussion or chat or a motion to officially approve those, that grading criteria.
Davis, just for clarity, would you review the difference between size / scalability to conformity to shape? Is the
Sure.
The scalability mean can you shrink it down and still see it versus conformity to shape means it would still go in that same triangle kind of design, right?
Correct. And that conformity to shape is really specific to the uniform, right? So that we can avoid having to completely replace uniforms. That's the intent there, is to keep that shape the same to minimize the cost.
And the scalability just means can it be shrunk down and still be seen from a distance or read or whatever?
When it's on a business card, what's it look like? When it's on the side of an SUV, what's it look like?
Right. Thank you.
Some of those have some pretty, I can't recall each of those designs as whether they made 50% or not, but some of them have some pretty finite detail that might cause some problems. But that's for all of us to look at through that grading process and rank on a 1 to 10. How we feel it's going to move forward. So.
And can I ask another question that's been posed to me? Is if you like the design, but not the wording, how do you address that? How do you suggest we address that?
I think that's a discussion for the group.
I think ultimately you're right. That is a discussion for the group. I mean, if one of the patches is look like it's bubbling to the top, but someone doesn't like this or that, maybe we can make small adjustments within them. Again, I defer back to the copyright rules, but I think that is up to us as far as color scheme. I mean, there were several of them where it's like, well, I like that one, just don't like the colors. Can we change the colors? So I think that's something we should certainly consider.
I think we
much
would definitely want to. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. How much actual say does the artist have in their design? And will that be something that they may get offended about? I'm a lightweight artist, being a barber myself, so the artist takes offense to their work being criticized to where you don't like it. So, or is that something that is going to be, once they submit those, then basically
Sorry, we missed that last part.
I was saying, or is it that once we have it and they submitted it, then they release all rights, they release all connection to that design, and then we're allowed to manipulate it as we so see fit?
Unfortunately, I don't. Some of those earlier submissions, Joe, you can probably speak to this a little bit. I know for a fact that we didn't, in the most recent round, we didn't have any sort of disclaimer that submitting resulted in a full wave of ownership, and so we would have to go back to the artist and make the request. But I don't know what that. I don't know about that initial those initial submissions that we included in this round. Joe, if you could speak to that one.
The initials, we did have a disclaimer saying once you submitted it, it was our property. We could change it. We could do whatever we wanted with it. I don't believe that was in the second submission. And I can't answer to what would happen if we changed it. I don't know how much exclusive rights they'd have. So that's something, if we decided to, I guess we'd probably have to reach out with. The initial ones, we really didn't even keep track of who submitted them. They came in, they got posted, and that was it. So I don't know if we kept track this time of where these designs came from, but it might be difficult to reach out to somebody if it was just, I had a packet come to the front counter one day and I gave it to Kendra. So if we know who they are, maybe, but I don't know that we know them all.
And Tavis and Joe, can I also ask, if you really like something, but you do want to have a color change or a word change, would you suggest that we score it high because overall we like it, but make a note on the bottom of the submission that we like it with this change? How would you suggest we score, that the committee score it?
Well, my suggestion is you got to score with the criteria we have. And then if it comes forward and, first of all, if it's, if I like it and nobody else does, changing the color isn't going to change that. So I think if it gets to the point where it's, hey, these are like our top 4, what don't you like about it? Well, I don't like the colors. Well, we can change the, and then I think it becomes more of a negotiation among the committee as to what we like, what we don't like, why I voted no for that one when Spencer voted yes. What was the difference? And maybe we can find a chord that way with small changes within our patches.
I think that's good information for the committee to consider, that they vote on it the way it's submitted. You can negotiate changes later, but you vote on it the way it's printed out in front of you.
And it's important too that what's the next step in this process is for us to grade them. So if you think there are some changes potentially to be had, we can talk about that when we actually vote as a group. But the individual scores, I would recommend you score it as it's presented. If you've got some tweaks, there is a space at the bottom for notes. It does say brevity is appreciated, so we don't just have books upon books at the end of this thing. But there is once, let's say we consider the first 5 Griffin designs. There's or whichever design, right? We consider it and we like it, whether it's a Griffin or a non-Griffin. but we don't care for the color, or we want to don't care for the wording, right? And there's some consensus and discussion amongst all of us within the group that we should make a request of the artist. That I think that's appropriate, and it's certainly the prerogative of this committee to do so. Now, it may be also the prerogative, depending on how that design was submitted, it may also be the prerogative of that artist to say no. And we would just have to sort of cross that bridge when we get to it. But I think having discussion, I don't think this process is meant to be so scientific that it completely takes out human emotions and personalities and thoughts and feelings. It's just there to be a guide, and then we take these points, have educated discussions, and there might still be some heated conversations, and that's fine. That's good.
Davis, can I make an interjection?
Yeah.
One suggestion that we can consider that I would like to put on the table would be that once the committee decides the actual design, then we can give leeway to the department themselves to choose whatever color that they decide as a department, to give them some say on as a collective and as a department on that piece of it. That's just another aspect to be able to allow them as a department to come together. Since they're wearing the patch, yes, it represents us in our city, but we've cleared up whatever issues that were had in choosing the new patch. Now let's give them some of the flexibility to be able to take some control over their own design as well.
All right, we've got a motion. Do we have a second?
On the spirit of discussion, I'll second that for Jamie.
All right, so we've got a motion and a second. Suspect we've got some discussion.
Speaking from the department standpoint, I like it. It creates some buy-in. We may not be able to change it. That's my fear. If we reach a design we like and the department says, hey, we like these colors, and everybody's in agreement, and we take it to the artist and they say, yeah, absolutely not. I mean, that would be where it would be troublesome, but I'd like to find a way to establish some more input from the officers that do wear the patch every day.
I almost wonder if we hold off on it until we settle in on a design, and at least have some idea of whether we're going to have to bounce back to a designer, or if we're not. Like that, part of me says that it might be jumping the gun a little bit.
And to me, what it initially does, Tavis, is it takes it away from the panel to have to do that extra work, and puts the responsibility on the department on that end. Once the design is changed, then again, we don't have to keep meeting to say, okay, what color, what this, what that. With those, with that piece of the change as far as color scheme, then that again it gives them the opportunity to have some sort of say so with the design. It creates the to me the unity piece versus, okay, you have to change it, here's what it is, wear it if you like it or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I also recognize, I've certainly heard some discussion from folks, right, that depending on the elements within the design, then colors may matter. That the balance of colors given certain elements, look, I'll just be straight up. If we settle in with a Griffin design that's very similar to the existing Griffin, maybe with just tweaks, and I'm not endorsing, I'm not suggesting none of that. Just saying, in that event, if it also maintains the same color, that may not be enough change for other folks outside of the department that we're looking for more change. So just throwing it out there. My preference would be once we get to a design that we like, then we have that consideration. Aaron, I saw your hand raised. I think I saw Shaviva as well. Nope. Okay, just Aaron.
I think it's such a beautiful idea, and I agree with getting more input from the police, but I also agree with Tavis that the control over who chooses the design does belong to the committee. And I just want to make sure that's clear. You know, I would love to get more input, but I don't like the idea of saying to the police, here are a couple of options, you guys pick, and then the committee just never meets again. You know, I'd like to know their input, but it is our responsibility. And I kind of want to make sure it stays that way. Like, I'd like all the input, but then I still want the community to be able to respond to that input. And that's the job of the committee.
And I think the composition of this committee also allows for that discussion, right? So it's not as if this is obviously there are a number of officers who are current and retired. So there's certainly voices. This really is, it was crafted as a balanced committee. And I suspect, actually, I know that there are constantly conversations about where this is headed, and if there were real red flags, I suspect that we would hear those from police current and former. Do we have any more discussion on that piece? We do have a motion on the table unless it's withdrawn, but we've got a motion on the table.
Davis, what is the motion?
The motion currently is to allow whatever design is ultimately agreed upon for the department to choose the color scheme of that design,
or make other changes. The way I heard Jamie's motion, it would be to make any other minor changes, and that could be wording. It could be, we got to be careful and define whatever you're saying the police could change.
The motion that I want to put on the table was what we were discussing with the color scheme.
Okay, just colors.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, that would be when we got down to one
correct
candidate. Why?
Correct.
What would be wrong with making that survey with a PD membership when we had 6 or 8 or 4? When we get down to just the one, it seems like somebody else mentioned it, that we're turning over we have to be careful that we're not turning over our responsibility.
I agree.
Mr. Hall, Ms. Spencer, and we recently already went over a lot of the designs. We are actively seeking input from officers on all shifts, which include color scheme. So that is something that we're already doing, and that we'll have conversations about once finalists emerge.
Very good, thank you.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Can I just say, it seems like
Go ahead. Go ahead, LaTanya.
Well, again, I'm in agreement with Aaron, because if this committee was formed to vote on the different designs, the whatever they look like, whatever color they are, you know, it should be left to the committee.
Aaron, you had a thought?
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, LaTanya. I'm so sorry. I was just going to say, though, it seems like a lot of the designs maybe came from one designer. Like, it seems like some of the designs, you can tell, like, almost one person created a few different designs. And I think they did that for the sake of flexibility, you know? So if there's a particular group that we like and it seems clear it's from one designer, I bet the designer would be willing to work with whatever considerations we asked for.
Yeah. All right. So we've got. Go ahead, Teresa.
So then this, just devil's advocate, that's my role in staff meetings. So we submit this to the police. They say, these are the colors we want. And our committee then says, no, I don't want to damage our relationship with them if they come back and say, this is what they want, but it had been something we had discounted earlier. Just food for thought.
Do we have any further thoughts, discussion?
Well, this is Tim. I don't know this at all, but my suspicions are that it's not going to come down to color. It's going to come down to the content, the shape, et cetera, even the wording. And hopefully we won't, have to cross this bridge. But I personally, I'm not as concerned about last minute arguments over or contests over color schemes as I am other elements of the design. And I've shown the designs when we had the 100 and some to family members and others just for input and reaction. And it doesn't bother me at all that that we would single out the police department members with maybe a little bigger voice than just the average person on the street. They're the ones whose uniforms, et cetera, will be impacted.
I would note that whether this motion passes or doesn't, it doesn't mean that at future meetings actually, I'm not 100% sure. If the motion fails, I might have to look to a council member here. If the motion fails here, can it be revisited at a future meeting? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I again want Dave's concurrence, but I would agree, we're not bound by, well, maybe we are bound by council rules, but I think you could amend the motion sufficiently that it could be reconsidered. What I really wanted to interject is I liked what Spencer said and what Tim said. They're showing it to people now. Get the input now and share that with us at some point. But Aaron's absolutely right. It is the committee that is to make the final decision. But getting input is always good, always.
Yeah. All right. So we do have a motion and a second to allow for to at this time outline and specify that the department will ultimately choose our colors. And we've had, I think, sufficient discussion at this point. We'll probably have to do a roll call vote on this one. All in favor, please unmute and say aye. Well, let's do a roll call. Cliff. Oop.
Yes.
Spencer.
No.
Latanya.
Sorry, Tavis, I'm juggling between two meetings. What did you ask me? I'm sorry.
If we are, the motion is to allow the police department to choose a logo or choose the color of the logo once a design is agreed upon.
No.
All right, thank you. Aaron.
Also no.
Shaviva.
No.
Rhonda.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Teresa.
No.
Marcus. Marcus on? Yep, there we go. Oh, sorry, we didn't hear you, Marcus. Still don't hear you. I can see you went unmuted. Is your phone also on mute? I can see he's going off of mute. There we go. There we go. Marcus voted yes through the chat. Jamie.
Yes.
And my vote would be no. So right now we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 6 no's and 6 yeses. So the motion fails to pass, but that does not mean that it can't be considered at future meetings, especially once we have a design. So,
Tavis, this is Tim. Just for the record, I was out of the room.
Go ahead, Tim.
Tim is a yes. Tim is a yes.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let me make sure I've got this right. We've got Cliff, Marcus, Rhonda, Jamie, Tim as yes. So that's 1, 2, 3. Sorry, Cliff, Marcus, Rhonda, Joe, Tim. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Jamie, which is 6. So that's 6 yeses. The remainder are no's, which again doesn't kill the idea. It just means that they just didn't pass the this time. So thank you. Good discussion. Next up on the agenda, we just need to agree on the grading criteria yet. I don't think I've got a motion. Do we have a motion to approve the grading criteria? My brain's starting to go to mush, guys. I've been up since 4 o'clock in the morning, so.
Tim moves that we approve.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to approve the voting criteria as outlined on the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Perfect. Thank you. Any opposed, same sign. And that motion carries. The last piece for us is the finalize the budget estimations to provide to council for budget purposes. We've got the pricing that was outlined by Libel here in the department a couple months ago. I think some of these pieces, speaking for myself, I don't know where other folks are at. I don't know if we need to make a recommendation on the entire package versus the four items as outlined. The vinyl cost at $11,360. The uniform cost at $77,900.70. The weapon cost at $61,625, and miscellaneous cost of $150. I don't know that
Davis, can I ask a question of Joe?
Yeah.
We as a council, and Dave chime in on this, we as a council are considering a leasing option for police vehicles. Joe, if that passes, part of the pricing that we're looking at includes a logo on the vehicles, does it not?
No, it does not. The leased vehicles would be unmarked vehicles, so they would not have logos.
So the only ones we're looking at are the leased vehicles? I mean, are the unmarked vehicles?
Yes, that is unmarked vehicles. That is the detectives, administrative staff, training unit, etc.
Okay, thank you.
I'll speak just briefly to the cost. If you add it up, it comes in about $150. That's in addition to our existing costs, which may not mean a lot to all of you, but we have a budgeted uniform line that we will still need. This is in addition. This is patch costs, replacement polos, because Councilman Bozen's tried. You can't take the patch off the polo without ruining them. This is additional cost. We can't cut our uniform budget and say this 77 will cover it. And I'm making hand signs realizing my camera's off, which is just a side funny note.
Oh.
And Tavis, and by resolution, we have to have these figures by February 1st to the council, so that we can include it somehow into our budget presentation, because we were doing the CIP today, and that is not, and that 150 plus is not included anywhere in the current budget or CIP askings.
Right.
And we're not sure legally if it could even be in CIP. That their research.
Right. No, I don't think it can.
I would agree.
And this is Tim, and I'm just gonna state what I think is the obvious. Our committee does not approve the expenditure. That's a city council job. What we need to do is find a design and a color and shape and all that stuff. That's our job. We can supplement, or should supplement, a bit on what we've already done on estimated costs, but we're going to provide information to the council, and that's it. They make the money decisions.
Yeah,
that is correct. And I would add to that that my strong preference here would be to simply make a motion to outline the expense, sort of itemized here as vehicle, uniform, weapon, and miscellaneous, because I think that's a discussion for council on whether a discussion for council in consult with the city attorney on, for instance, whether weapons, if that insignia on the weapons needs to be replaced, or if they can phase this in. I think that's a discussion for council. It is not a discussion for 12 unelected members of a committee. We can outline it's my suggestion that we outline the expense, but the implementation would really be up to council, and they would still have to approve the dollars anyway.
And Tavis, I would say, again, the resolution says that a preliminary financial report shall be delivered to the Waterloo City Council by February 1st, 2021. That's all it says.
Davis and I can take care of that with an email. That's simple enough. You know, we've got it here. I can simply email it to the council.
Yeah, and Joe had put together a pretty robust Excel sheet that outlined the expense that I'm sure we could forward over. I do think it would be good to have council, or I'm sorry, it would be good to have this committee make a motion to send these preliminary numbers to council for their consideration, just so that we're on the up and up with the resolution as it was written.
Nobody else speak up. I got it.
Davis,
I'll make a motion that we can send the outline over to the city council for their consideration for the cost of the budget.
I'll second.
All right. We've got a motion by Jamie and a second by Teresa to forward on the budget document, the preliminary budget document outlining expenses. All in favor, say aye. Or sorry, I'm sorry. Do we have any discussion?
Just Tim, just a perspective note and why I emphasize that this is a council decision on money. Just the costs that are estimated there in rough figures is about 6.8 or close to 7 cents on the levy. And council will be going into budget session soon fighting for pennies on the levy. So this is not an unimportant casual thing that we're involved in.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none. All in favor to forward these numbers over to council? I'll say aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. All right, the motion carries.
And Joe or Tavis will send that to the council and Kelly and everyone.
Well, I wasn't going to send it to Kelly, but I can. Yes, I will. I'll carbon her in on it. I'll get it to all of you.
Okay, because I don't know, that might need to be on the agenda. I don't know. And
Yeah, I do not know. I'll check with her.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. That's the end of the business as stated on the agenda. Unless there's anything else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Next meeting date?
Good luck. Oh, let's see.
When is the deadline to submit our grading?
Good catch. So our next meeting date do we want to stay with this second Wednesday of the month? Would originally be February 3rd, but I think that's going to be too quick to turn those scores around. So February 10th as a proposed next date at 3 o'clock.
Speaking for Latanya and I, we'll be double booked at 4, but that is what it is.
Well, we can move some stuff around. We can move our.
No, just leave it. It'll be fine. If we're not done in an hour, I know it's Latanya's bouncing between both and Chief's covering that one, so we'll be okay. If everybody else works that time, stay there.
All right. Well, hopefully by that point, that'll be the one where we really sort of go up or down on a lot of these designs. So fingers crossed there. We'll keep it up the 10th at 3 o'clock.
And you want scores submitted by when?
It'd be great if we could have them by the 3rd. Let's
Just say the 3rd. That's good.
Yeah. And then that gives
yeah.
you time to collate the,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. If the 3rd folks feel like they can get through, you know, a good number of questions there. 48 designs.
Get those scoring sheets out to everybody.
That'll probably take me a couple days just to get all those images inserted into the Google form, and I'll send it to Joe just so he can look through and see if I screwed something up. Should probably send it to Dave because he always catches me on some. You're good, man.
Not alone. That's
no. So yeah, the goal would be by the end of the week to get that sent around to the committee, and then if everybody's good to do a little cramming here, have those scores back by the 3rd. All right. Seeing some head nods, so I'll take them.
Thank you for doing all that, Tavis and Joe.
Yeah, thank you.
Mostly Tavis.
I'm just here. All right, y'all. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. I'm assuming that one definitely carries. You guys have a good week and good month, and we'll get some stuff out to you here later in a couple days.